Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I am one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with my favorite co-host, even when he forgets to press record, Andy Needham.
You're not supposed to share that.
I feel like we just need to be honest out the gate. This is the second time we are recording this entire episode. We've never done an entire episode.
It was our best episode ever, actually, I think.
Yep.
So that was unfortunate for the listeners.
And it truly was just you and I talking to ourselves.
We always said that, we want to just make this feel like you and me talking to each other, inviting other people in. We forgot the inviting other people in. Requires us to do, little things like hit the record button.
I feel like it's a rite of passage when you do a podcast, because when I used to do Hey Girl, there's a couple times that happened and I had guests, which I feel like is worse. I have scheduled this person to sit down. They've literally told me this incredible story. And then I look down and I'm like, oh no.
Can you just put those tears back? Let's just rewind this thing.
Rinse and repeat.
That's great. Well, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
It's 2025. Can you believe it?
Actually, no, I can't.
Yeah.
But I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's 25 years since I graduated high school this year. That's crazy.
How old do you feel?
25 years older.
25 years older.
I think so.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there'll be a 25th reunion. I don't know.
I went to these tiny little schools that don't even exist anymore. So those were never an option for me.
I'm not sure if I would go or not, but I mean, you kind of have Facebook, so you kind of follow along with the people that you were close to anyway now. So it's the ongoing.
Man, if you got invited to a reunion, I would want to go with you. I want to see the awkwardness play out in front of me.
That was high school. High school was pretty awkward. So
you think that's awkward? Try getting together 25 years later.
Yeah, that's great. So what's up with this mug here?
Listen, I am under the weather. And so you graciously allowed me.
Man, I sound so rude.
To bring hot tea in my favorite, if they can see it. Can I say the mug?
They're not yet a sponsor, but we would be willing to take their...
Sunday River, if you want to sponsor us, despite having maybe myself some traumatic memories from there.
It's a ski area for those of you who are not familiar with Sunday River in Maine.
Yeah, it's amazing, and this mug is incredible. But yeah, I've been under the weather a little, so I'm drinking the tea. I apologize if I clear my throat and the editor doesn't catch it. It happens.
It's all right.
My voice is a little more manly than it normally is.
What's the movie that we always joke about? I don't know. Is it High Fidelity or one of those films where it's like, have you heard of my husband's morning show?
Oh, I feel like that's on Runaway Bride, but I might be wrong. Where she's like, my name is Peggy Fleming. Maybe you've heard of my husband's morning show, Wake Up with Phlegm. Yeah, I definitely feel like.
We quote that all the time. We got to probably verify what, I felt it would be better. High Fidelity is a cooler movie than Runaway Bride. If I've been quoting Runaway Bride.
Whoa. Runaway Bride is a classic. In fact, just speaking the name, I now want to go watch Runaway Bride. It's that good.
All right. So thanks for watching, everybody, or listening. We're going to.
Also a funny movie to be talking about on a marriage podcast.
That is true. Yes.
Get married or not, or run. Yeah. Run for your life.
Well, we're turning a new chapter into a new year, which means new things, usually resolutions, commitments, ideas. But we're also leaving things behind, including all the food that we ate over the holidays.
Oh my goodness. You hit a point where you're just I can't.
Time out.
Done. I can't. But at the same time, I feel like before we fully say farewell to holiday treats, we need to give a couple of shout outs to just some of the top ones we had this year, because there were some standout performances this Christmas. And I'm just going to jump into the first one so you don't awkwardly have to say it, because you made this. But we did, for your family Christmas, we do soup and bread. Yes, I love it as well. We had decided, I don't remember how long ago, that, we don't really want to do a big turkey dinner again right after Thanksgiving. So we decided to do the soup and bread. So people make different soups. They either homemade bread or just whatever.
My nephew made a soup this year, which is kind of cool.
Yes. So this year, once again, this is not your first time pulling this out, but you made seafood chowder. But this year's seafood chowder, I don't know if you added an extra stick of butter or how you
I
did
won't
it.
divulge the amount of heavy cream, butter, and bacon that go into this chowder, but it is also loaded. I'm like, hey, look, we're just gonna go all out. It's once a year, and so like
you pack it with
seafood. So it's got like scallops and shrimp and clams and what else? We have whitefish and all kinds of things in there.
It was so good. It deserves a shout out. I'm giving that one first place of all of the goodness.
When I made it, I was like, there's so much of this that like we're going to be eating this. Like we'll have to freeze some, but that did not prove to be true.
No, I was eating it with a ladle. I want to stick a straw in that bad boy and just
that's good.
Drink it
Bulking
down.
Season is
yeah, for real.
Strong on that point. So
it was so good.
Because of course you also have to like dip bread into you have to take a piece of bread and then dip it in.
I don't do the bread. I am the oyster crackers.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you drop the oyster cracker only a couple at a time. You don't want to get too soggy.
That's a strategy.
Yeah, you drop them in. You just drown them for a second. A little baptism for all of them.
Fully immersed. We're doing baptism.
Name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and then you scoop those bad boys out.
And you
still got a little crunch to them. Oh, you will feel closer to Jesus, guaranteed. I'm telling you. So if you're local, order this stuff from Andy.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe that's a little side hustle of the holidays in the years to come. We can try to pay for all the gifts they're selling chowder. I don't know.
It is going to cost you a fortune for all the fish that's in it to order it, but it will be worth it. I promise you. And get the oyster cracker, the Westminster oyster crackers
in Westminster. Yeah, there's a building that it was pretty close to where I grew up, where the original Westminster Cracker Company was, and as every time we have it, my dad mentions, you played Little League games behind that building. And that's true. Played Little League behind the Westminster Cracker Building.
One year I dare you just to be like, no, I didn't.
You're losing your mind. Are you sure?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't remember it like that. All right. We also did, which is a tradition for us, the appetizers on Christmas Eve. Because
so good.
That kind of started when we were on staff at a church, because oftentimes if you're on staff at a church, your Christmas Eve is packed.
Well, this was a rare Christmas Eve because we often are serving at a church on Christmas Eve, but we served at our church on the Sunday before Christmas, gave a lot of the team a break. And then we were like, oh, this is going to be awesome. We'll get to go to Christmas Eve service together and do the appetizers. And then it was not as serious, like ended up not being super serious, but my mom had an accident with a knife and like gashed her hand on Christmas Eve night. So I ended up bringing her to first I had to find an open urgent care, which took me I'm like, I don't want to go to the ER. It was like right on that line, but you're like, well, tomorrow's Christmas. And if it is a problem, I don't know. So they ended up just gluing it. It was honestly, it was great, good care there. But that meant that you ended up going to Christmas Eve service without me. And so I got home a little bit before you guys. So I was like, well, I guess I can start, and made the air pop popcorn. We had crab rangoon. We had mozzarella sticks, a charcuterie, all kinds of different things laid out. And this is one area of debate, though, is that you, behind my back, went and bought a special seasoning for the popcorn, which I am not a believer. I believe that the way that God intended popcorn to be eaten is that you have to air pop it. None of that microwave stuff, that garbage. Just like the Pilgrims did, you air pop it.
Oh, the Pilgrims, okay.
When the
back in the garden,
Native Americans introduced corn, they're like, this can be air popped.
Oh, okay. I don't know what history books that you were studying, but okay.
My own anyway. I'm
following. So you're only about the butter and the salt.
You got to go pure, just butter and salt.
Okay. I, however, come from a world of, there are so many flavors and so many options. And I saw this one that was salt and vinegar, which was one of my favorite. I love salt and vinegar, all things salt and vinegar. And yeah, you've been bashing it, but that was good stuff. You just sprinkle it on top of your popcorn.
This is my thing though, is you buy this like, $5 container of seasoning for like 3 dashes on the popcorn. And there's no chance that is going to be used up in the next year. Like, I'd put money on it.
All right. How much money?
$5.
Listen, my seasoning is cheaper than your Triscuits, so
actually about the same price, frankly.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, inflation.
We'll see. I might get through it by the end of the year. So
it's gonna be like putting it on your cereal or something like that. Like,
it's not a bad idea.
Smoothie.
I would love listener suggestions on what I could add this salt and vinegar seasoning to. There's probably more.
I would say like a potato. You probably could do that. Would be fine.
That's weird, but okay.
Salt and vinegar on a potato is weird.
Oh, okay.
The reason
French
that you
fry.
like salt and vinegar is because of a potato chip. And so you're like, oh, you know what's really bizarre is putting salt and vinegar on a potato.
I just am picturing this baked potato, and it just feels weird to sprinkle it with salt and vinegar, but maybe it won't. We'll try it later. I'll let you know.
Strange convictions.
Yeah, I do. All right, so basically, shout out. We love. Oh, the only other one that we do need to mention are those gummy bears that we accidentally discovered, and now we're kind of obsessed with.
I think it was like a gift bag. It was something at a hotel we stayed at, and it's like, some of you will know this brand. It starts with an A. It's like a white packaging, but it's like gourmet gummy bears.
They're not your average gummy bears.
Not your mother's.
No, they're not that kind of gummy bear. You'll feel so relaxed in just a couple of
These gummies are amazing. They're very addicting.
We sound like we just pounded some right before we came on here. No, these are regular gummy bears that are just so much better than the ones that
C and B and D. Just kidding. They're not that.
It's funny that I feel like there's a Freaky Friday moment. I'm normally the one making these jokes.
Get this back on.
And I am, let's rein it in. Needham, rein it in. We're going to get letters asking where to buy these gummy bears.
Well, we've been thinking about, because this last year we had a lot of uncertainty about where we would be living, what would be next, what God had for us. And he's brought great clarity to that. We've talked about that a little bit in last week's episode. But part of that has been like, we've now lived in this house longer than any place that we've ever lived, 5.5 years in the same home, which doesn't seem like a long time, but we moved a ton, especially early marriage. And this is our second home that we've owned. And we've kind of been like, hey, if we're going to be here for another season, maybe another 5 years, maybe beyond, let's take care of this place. Let's, some of that is stewardship and the sort of the non-sexy things like, we need to replace the roof in the next couple of years and that kind of stuff. And other things we're like, hey, how can we invest in continuing to make this a place that we want to be? And because some of that we learned when we sold our last house, we did a ton of work at the end, like almost everybody does. Everybody told us that this would be true, but we had the same feeling of like, why didn't we do that stuff earlier? And now
we did it all for someone else to enjoy.
Yeah, we're like, oh, well, okay. We're trying to not repeat that and kind of rethink things here at this house. But it's brought up the principle and something that we want to talk about today, which is no matter what domicile you have, whether you're renting an apartment or if you're in an in-law apartment or you're living with someone or your house, what does it look like to make it a home? What does it look like to make it a home? And how does that impact your marriage? And how can that be a space through different seasons and different resources? How do you do that? And so why don't you introduce like one of the things that, again, I think this went back to maybe even as far back as premarital counseling for us that we started this conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that we decided was that we wanted to commit to make our home a sanctuary. So whatever home looked like, that we would do everything that was within our capability to do. And that's everything from budgetary restrictions to space restrictions, make the best of every space that God provided us and brought our family. And some of that was started with us sort of figuring out what we meant when we said sanctuary, like, because we are two different people wired very differently. And so
what are you talking about?
Yeah. And so things that were priorities for me weren't necessarily for you, but also vice versa. So how do we kind of bring those things together and work together to kind of create this space that when we were coming home at the end of a day, because we started out full-time ministry when we first got married, and it was camping ministry. So essentially coming home after a really late night of, we'll say, teen winter camp, and we've been go, and to be able to get back into our home and be able to just take a nice deep breath and feel relaxed and have a space that we could rest And some of that was because that time was kind of sacred time for us. And so not returning home to just more stress or piles of things or whatever it was that could stress us out. And so, yeah, creating or making our home a sanctuary was a big thing for us, or not just when we first got married, but this has been an ongoing thing that we have talked about. So
do you remember our first apartment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Jaff Woods. If you live in the Jaffrey, New Hampshire area, you probably still, we're not sure if it's still called that.
Oh, it's still there, though. Those red brick
the most
buildings.
Vanilla, commercial, basic apartment that you could ever imagine. If you just picture like white walls, linoleum tile, very basic cabinets, the kind of carpet that has like no tread to it. It's just like,
yeah. Oh yeah. They're not investing in the aesthetics of this. They're just trying to create durable, simple boxes for people to pay them rent and, they can make money.
That was our first place. And we were obviously very young when that happened. And so I think like I had a futon and maybe a desk, I don't know. And everything else that we had in that futon was not special. That was a terrible futon with like metal bars that you could feel when you sat on it. But we just collected things. We had people that would just give us stuff. And so like I remember like the bed that we had was a full-size bed. Somebody was super generous to give it to us. But I think this desk is actually softer than that bed.
Yeah, it felt like laying on cinder blocks, to be honest.
It's great. Good for your back.
Yeah. That's true. Very good for your back.
And then our kitchen table, it was like very simple round table, but it had like this almost like it was arched. It was warped. And so like if you weren't careful what you set something, it could end up in your lap because it was like gravity would do its work and it was not a flat table. So it was quite special. I went to Walmart and splurged on 2 metal folding chairs.
And they were blue. I remember blue.
Well, you were big into the blue and the gray. So I was like, Bethany will be impressed by these folding chairs. They're so versatile. When you want to clean the kitchen, you just fold them up. Like, it's just amazing.
It's very true. And honestly, like my memories of that table and sitting around having meals, I still laugh because you just needing to hold your plate while you're eating so that your plate doesn't slide off the table.
It's like eating on a ship. Like,
it is. It very much is.
We didn't know we would be into cruising later on, but like the table prepared us for it.
Yeah.
So it was
we were ready.
We were ready for that. And then there was a green chair that my parents gave us. All the strapping, all the, if there were ever springs, that was decades before we inherited this thing. And it was, I think, did you like fold up a bunch of blankets?
We had to shove blankets, towels, whatever extra we could find to hold the cushion seat up because there was nothing underneath the seat.
Very special.
It was very special.
Our first big fight was a decor fight, actually.
Oh yeah, because I thought that I was marrying the
indifferent husband who didn't care about decor.
Yep, pretty much. And that was not how that played out whatsoever. So I'm gonna let you tell this one.
Well,
I still get fired up. No.
Yeah, well,
just kidding.
This is the second time we've had to relive this fight today. Because
I know I'm still heated.
So
I'm not over the first time.
Well, again, I gave you the picture of the apartment. I mean, it definitely was like just like we're trying to move beyond the college dorm.
I would just trying to make it look the least amount like a frat house because most of our furniture.
It was the cleanest frat house you've ever seen.
Yes.
So anyway, Bethany went out, ran some errands, and I was like, you know what? We have this patchwork gray and blue, like very generic, no pattern to it, just patchwork quilt that somebody gave us, a king size quilt in the living room. And I was sitting there and I think the Lord gave me a vision.
I do not think that was from the Lord, but continue.
Well, I guess I could be wrong. So I was like, this massive wall that Bethany's been like, there's just something needs to go there. Well, I finally figured out what needs to go there. And so I went to the closet and we had this like tiny little toolkit that somebody gave us, like our first toolkit. And I opened it up and it had the world's smallest hammer. And it was like this little, like, I don't know, like what an elf would use to build something in the North Pole. And there was this little container of these little brad nails that were like for hanging things up in your,
teeny tiny little things.
Yeah, like maybe you could hang like, I don't know, a real small picture with it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to need to use a lot of these. So I got the folding chair, moved it in the living room, took that quilt and I nailed it to the wall all the way across and had this massive, beautiful Mona Lisa mosaic just spread out in the living room. And I just sat back and I was like, Bethany is going to love this. She's going to be like, you are a problem solver. You saved us money. And I'm just thankful that the Lord has put you in my life.
Yeah. That then your real wife, Bethany, showed up and saw that ugly blanket. That's very filtered how I'm describing this. Hanging on this big blank wall. And I cannot, like, I really wish that we had digital cameras back then so that I had, because I feel like you were defending this and you will defend it, that you thought it did not look bad. It looked terrible. And it took this room that I had worked so hard to try and pull the frat house vibe out of it, and you just solidified. Like, I literally was like, I feel like that decor probably came with beer pong.
I didn't go to college, so, you know, the Lord.
Well, you were living it up.
I keep throwing the Lord in this. I got to be careful.
Yeah.
I get struck by lightning, but I don't think it was the Lord, actually.
I'm glad that you're acknowledging that. The Lord is about beautiful things, and that was not what this was.
I was just like, look, just sleep on it. Tomorrow you will wake up in the morning. The sun will come through the window. It'll hit this blanket, and you'll just be like, thank you.
Yeah. No, we went to bed that night, and I don't remember how the fight. I'm sure
going to bed in a fight, basically.
Yeah, we were in a fight, and it was not ending, and it was our classic. I was being me, and you were digging your heels, and it was escalating, and I finally was just like, that's it. I'm sleeping in the living room. And I just, it sounds so
I'm trading
extreme.
This cinder block bed for that terrible futon.
Yeah. I'd rather have poles sticking in my back. So I climbed out of bed, stormed out of the room, went out into the living room, and realized that it was freezing cold.
They didn't have money for heat back then.
Yeah, apparently not. And so a few minutes later, I come sneaking back into the bedroom, and your most smug tone, we won't go with.
I thought you were sleeping in the living room.
Yeah, was basically what I heard. And I turned, and I was so angry. And I was like, I can't even say it. I would, except it's freezing cold out there, and the only blanket we own is nailed to the wall. I don't think I added any expletives. That came later in marriage. I hadn't learned any cuss words yet, but if I had,
you thought them. You didn't say it.
I probably thought them. And it was just such a funny, it was one of those, it doesn't always happen this way, but for us, it just broke the tension. And we both just burst out laughing at the ridiculousness of the whole thing.
Hey, you may not have been impressed by my decor, but you have to be impressed with my diligence.
Boy, I was out there in all the rage trying to rip this blanket off of the wall, and it was not budging. Like, I swear, 50,000 nails went into that project.
50,000, that's a little strong.
I yanked pretty hard. It was not moving. So I apologize to our landlords.
I did eventually
fill those holes.
We did eventually remove it from there, but it was one of those things that, like, we did have to kind of learn from. I think one thing that we did going forward, every time that we did have some resources, like, our home was one of the things that we invested in. When we would get a tax return, we would get rid of that futon. That was one thing that was good. I don't even think we gave that away. We're like, we don't wish this on our enemies. But
yeah,
then
nobody wanted that.
Nobody wanted that. And then we got a dining room table that you didn't have to worry about things falling off of. And it just kind of slowly progressed from there.
Well, we realized, we joke about the blanket story, but one of the things that we realized early on is that part of the wiring of who we are in our marriage was that as we started building this home together, that we both needed to come together in that decision. Like, it wasn't just going to be me making all the decisions and you're like, I don't care. And so that took some effort, learning each other, what matters to you, what matters to me. And so I do feel like it took us a bit to kind of find our rhythm in creating sanctuary in the homes that we were in.
Well, I think it's a broad marriage principle, but it definitely applies to setting up a home, is that part of the way that you learn and you mature in this is you start to say, my opinion is not the only one that matters. Like, we're going to talk the communication thing you mentioned, but also there are some things that are going to matter to you way more than they matter to me. And part of what I do as my act of love is I choose to say, I'm going to honor. Maybe I don't value it the same way, but I'm going to honor the fact that that's important to you. And I'm going to pay attention to that to the best of my abilities. And that's one of the things that I think we have really worked hard to do over the years.
Yeah, because just because it doesn't matter to me doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Like, if it matters to you, then part of how I love you is, again, I don't have to hold, it doesn't matter if I hold the same value in it, but the effort I put into that does matter. Like, I can't just ignore the things that matter to you and be like, well, that's on you. You need to get over it. And there's sort of that side. And we've talked about some of our own personal growth with there were things for each of
Yeah.
us that maybe did matter too much that we needed to be like, okay, I actually need to shift in this because this is unreasonable. Like, I have some unreasonable expectations in this that I need to sort of level out.
100%. I think it's both of those things. Like when it comes to the other person, that your goal is to show honor. And then when it comes to your own preferences, like what can I lay at the feet of the cross and what can I set aside and what, can I look at this a different way? And you have to be honest because sometimes it's like things that are almost subconscious, like they're not necessarily overt. But if you want to create a sanctuary for both people and then for your kid, which that is another thing, like once your family grows, like I remember you coming home from the first time you had a baby shower and I'm like, oh my goodness, I think we now have twice as much stuff.
Yeah, the smaller the human being, the bigger and like just more stuff that they actually have. It's crazy. They're the tiny little things and they have
So
car
much.
seats and carriers and strollers and swings that go around and swings that go side to side and it's insane. Yeah. And we did not have the space for all of that stuff.
We did not. And, I think that's a whole different era of creating home as a sanctuary because it's not just about your marriage. Like it needs to be a place for your kids to feel at home. But feeling at home doesn't mean that they necessarily get to rule the roost. And it's, you don't want to create your home as a museum, but it doesn't have to be a McDonald's play place either. So how do you feel like that we navigated that reality?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was the flexibility that we needed to have as different seasons of life. And even before babies, the changing in where we lived, because each environment looked different. So our first apartment to our second apartment to the first house that we lived in, all different spaces. Like, it took sort of reimagining it every single time. And then you add kids into the mix, and kids come with their own stuff. And also, you can't expect a little kid to have the same, the values and
Yeah.
intentionality of home as a sanctuary. They're like, I don't even know how to say that word. So I think as we started building our family, one of the things is we had to think about what are the values here? What does sanctuary look like when you have small kids? And kids do have toys, and they're growing really fast. So their shoes and their clothes are more than maybe normal, and they're always changing. And so we had to figure out systems that worked for us. And again, this comes back to understanding what was of value for us. I recognize that there are some people who are listening that honestly, when they consider this idea of home as a sanctuary, they may have a very different definition of what that is. And that's actually okay. Like, you have to decide this for your marriage, like between the two of you. But for us, we decided very early on that clutter was something that we both kind of struggled with. And by clutter, I mean just having a lot of things around, like a lot of toys, a lot of gadgets. We are not like knickknack people for the most part. And so it wasn't always an understood decision of ours. I actually have a lot of vivid memories of friends who made fun of me when our kids were little, just the fact that we did not have a lot of toys around our house. Now, here's what I'll say. One of the things that I started doing when the kids were young was I tried to find parts of the furniture within our house that sort of, I love interior decorating. So the decor that doubled as storage. So our IKEA shelf, it was super trendy back then, those like cube shelves. We got these nice baskets that sort of fit the decor of the room, but I made the decision that our kids would only have as many toys as fit in these baskets. One, because it made it super easy to clean up at the end of the day. Like during the day, they had their toys out there. But at the end of the day, when it was time to sort of wind down for the night, I wasn't alphabetizing, color coding anything. My personality was, I don't like clutter, but I need it to be simple and quick. And so I just throw everything in those baskets, close the baskets. And if you looked, it looked like there were no toys in our house, but there were. It was just a different way that we did that. And so yeah, being creative with that. Some people love having toys around their house, and that's great. Like, decide what works for you. But for me, in some ways, it was being okay that people were like almost questioning that decision to not have more toys. And I was like, my kids have plenty of toys to play with.
Yeah, I mean, this is another, like, people have different convictions on this too, but like we often, our kids had a pretty early bedtime through a lot of their younger days. And like part of our shutdown, we would tuck the kids in, tell them a story, pray, all that kind of stuff with them. But then part of that was like we would go into this mode, okay, let's get the house kind of flipped into adult, mode. Yeah. Like this is going to be a space for us to watch a show or read or have a conversation. There were times when like our bedroom barely fit our bed. Like, we've I think it was one time we couldn't even get around both sides. Like I had to like crawl into bed in that one house.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those where it just was the mattress basically, and that was the whole room.
Well, it's interesting that like that's another thing too. Like I think that happened in two of our houses where we actually at that time, just based on where the kids were, we gave them larger bedrooms because we wanted them to have. We didn't have enough house to have a playroom or a dedicated space for kids. So sometimes we would give them a larger bedroom because we wanted to make sure, like, yes, they could still have toys in the main living areas of the house, but we're like, okay, if you want to build your massive Lego set and build all your stuff out, like, okay, now you have room in your bedroom. And so like we made changes at different times to do that.
We had one apartment in particular that we gave them the master, which was huge in that house, but it was great because it had so much space for their toys and both their beds. There was a little ensuite bathroom, which when you're potty training kids, and for us, we're like, there's only a couple of things we do in the bedroom. We only need the bed. So we'll take the little bedroom. That's fine. It's a marriage podcast. Is that not appropriate?
Everything has its place.
That was the honest reason. And that was honestly what we were thinking. And so that was a stage where the kids had certain things, like they would be building a project that I'm not going to rip down their creations every night because I don't want it around the house. But if it's in their room, again, tucked away, that's how my brain helps me be calm and everything else. So their rooms were allowed to have those things. And it gave them space to also like have their own sanctuary that looked different than mommy's sanctuary, and that's okay. So
it's interesting as our kids went through adolescence, they definitely had eras where for both our kids where it was like, oh my goodness. And we would force them, like we were quick to be like, you're going to do your own laundry. And we would at times be like, all right, I think that this is unsafe how unclean this is. So we need to have you deep clean your room. But it's interesting over time, now that our kids are young adults, they both have some of this ethic in them. And like, Josiah just, he was FaceTiming me the other day and he's like, I want to show you how I set up my room. And like, he's going to carry forward some of that and, different ways of doing it. Different for him, it's LED and gaming stuff now. Then, it's not. Then Mercy had like the most coordinated dorm room in the history of dorm rooms when she went to school.
The first time I visited her, I think I was dropping her off and I went in her dorm room and I was like,
Proud mom.
Proud mom. I was like, it was just so nice and very relaxing and peaceful.
She made money at school because her dorm was picked as one to be able to show off on like a preview weekend or something like that, which is kind of funny. They like paid her. So that's an interesting thing. We lived in a lot of rented or borrowed or places that we didn't own. And that, those restrictions, I'm not like a great builder, but I definitely have learned how to paint. So paint is a massive thing that you can do pretty easily to help freshen up a space depending on the rules of where you live. We bought our first house and that was a crazy thing because I was traveling with the band. You were working at the church. So like we definitely know where the money is, Christian music and youth ministry.
Rolling in it.
And we had always had this dream to be able to buy a house that could be a space where my parents could live. As my dad in his middle age went through some things with his health that made that he was disabled. And that was kind of something that we had talked about before. And one day we were driving down the road and we saw this for sale sign for this old farmhouse. We didn't know at the time it was built in 1707, at least the first part of the house. It was the least expensive house in a very expensive town. And it was a massive building and we walked through it and it brought my parents back. Both of them are the children of the generation that sold the family farm. And so like there was the nostalgia there of this old house. And we scraped together all of our nickels and dimes and pennies and we put in an offer. And I remember we were on vacation and we got back and we had a voicemail on my cell phone. It was like, this is happening. And so for your 30th birthday, I bought you a house. I will never be able to top that again.
No, that was pretty epic. We signed, like we closed on my birthday.
Yeah. And we got the key and we're like, all right, let's get our friends together. And so this house, I mean, again, it had at one point been foreclosed on. It was kind of a rundown house. Lots of potential, as everyone would say, or they'd be like, you're crazy.
Most people just thought we were crazy.
Yeah. I remember, so I went over, I turned the heat on in the house. You went, bought some food, and we had like some friends over, just hanging out in this big empty house, just kind of showing them the place. And somebody was like, why are the windows steaming up? And and then I opened the door to the crickety, dungeony basement.
Super creepy.
And there was a flood.
Yeah.
There was like 4 or 5 inches of water already just pouring out. Went down there, looking around. When I turned the heating system on, there was already a break because of the frozen pipes, and it just let go. And we could see where this broken pipe was, but it was in a place that you could not, it wasn't even a crawl space. It was like a space you could shine a flashlight in, and no human could possibly climb down there. It was just this long chase underneath the kitchen. And we're like, okay, we can see it. I don't know what to do. Like, turn the water off to the house. But it was actually the whole heating system that was draining. So that wasn't helping. And then our friend, Matt Nadine was like the Bob Vila of, she went on so many mission trips with us and helped us build all kinds of things. And she's like, how would you feel if I cut a hole in the floor? I think I can figure out where it is and we could fix it. And I'm like, well, I've owned this house for 4 hours, so why not? And so
let's pull out the saw.
I still have a picture of it. I sometimes I'll just remember this sweet moment of community, one of our values. And we're trying to figure out like, okay, how far down does it, like, it was like this whole thing. And we're like, I think we stopped and prayed and we're like, Lord,
yes,
let this be. And so we cut a hole in the kitchen floor and she nailed it. It was right in the spot. And Matt got the plumbing supplies from Lowe's and we fixed the pipe. And that was that was like day one of owning this house. And there's so many stories. I mean, hundreds of stories, hundreds of animals that we had to evict, hundreds of things that broke. It was quite an experience.
I know this is kind of a rabbit trail, but I have to say, because that day had so much to it. We had hung a sheet and had a projector for all the kids, and the kids were watching Elf in one of the empty random rooms. And so we were popping popcorns. The basement was flooding. You guys are trying to figure that out. The popcorn maker, the smoke from it sets off one of the fire alarms. So the fire alarm's going off. The basement is flooded. And one of the kids runs downstairs and basically ratted out. One of the little kids had gone to the bathroom in the middle of the floor upstairs because they
kid's probably in college now. So
yeah, they were not fully potty trained. And I just remember sitting there. It's funny because I think about, we're talking about your home as a sanctuary. We look back and it honestly is one of the sweetest memories for us of having community in this home. As crazy as it was, we were laughing at like, we've had fire, we've had flood, and now we've had crap. Like,
is there a fan for it to hit?
Yeah, we're like, we're going to go through all the plagues right here. That was the start of our very first home ownership. And I would be lying to say I didn't have a moment of,
what have we done?
Did we just make the worst decision? Was everyone right? This was a disaster.
Lots of great memories in that house. So many milestones for us. For you, as someone who loves to clean, like you used to joke, and it's very true. It's like you could clean forever and it would never feel clean because it was just an old house. Quite an interesting chapter. But I always remember, I think it was even as we were buying the house, we value hospitality. We always want to have our home be a place that's used for ministry. And like that continues to be an ethic for us today. But I think, that scarcity mindset and buying this house and feeling like this extravagance, maybe that we were like buying this massive, it was like well over 3,000 square feet. There's a huge barn in the back. There's a pool. There was sort of this like qualifying way that we would talk about it sometimes. And you had a great mentor who gently kind of challenged you on that a little bit. You want to share that story?
Yeah, I think it was when I went to share with her that we were doing this, that we were putting the offer in, and I didn't even catch myself doing it. But as I'm telling her about this house and our excitement, I was basically qualifying everything. Yep. Like from, well, yeah, it's really big, but we're going to host and have all these
good deal
people.
And we're
yeah, like I'm making, and she stopped me partway through sharing and was just like, hey, so I feel like you just need to check your theology on God's goodness. What if this home is something that God wants to gift you just for your family? Like, what if the only people that really benefit in all, like in terms of tangible, whatever, is just your family has this home, this sanctuary to live in. And that's all that God is calling you to, that it isn't something that you have to in some way like prove why or make it worth it. I don't know how you want to say it. And it caught me off guard. And I never had stopped to think about checking my own theology in that moment. And it made me realize that, one, I do feel like God gifted us that home in a season. And granted, we had the opportunity to do a lot of things, and I'm grateful for the ministry that we were able to do there. But just to be able to receive that gift from God without needing to feel like I had to earn it, like it's almost like, okay, God, I'll take this house, but don't worry, like I won't let you down. And God's like, it was okay for me to just rejoice in that and be grateful and not feel like I then had to earn everything that he had given us in that home.
Yeah, I think that we don't want to lose gratitude, or there should be a contentment. I know for me, like this last year in this house, like we were kind of, this last summer, I was like, look, we're either going to end up staying or we're going to move. Like one of the two things are going to happen. I've been through enough moves. We've been here 5 years. So like we should take the time this last summer, we were very intentional. Like we went hard and like we went through every room in the house, every closet, every attic. And we just really said, okay, what are the things that we need to keep? To the point where some of our family are like, are you guys moving? We're like, maybe. But it's been interesting. Like that process has, for me, sparked so much gratitude and sort of like a falling back in love with this place that God has given to us. And that contentment has kind of risen. I think Zillow can actually be like a dangerous app. Like I know for us at times, like you can be on there. I can be looking at, oh, look how much equity we have. Or I could be like, look at the house that we could buy or that other place. I just want to encourage people, like the message here today, as you think about these things, is a message of grateful stewardship. Of how can you take whatever God is giving? Because we've had times we've lived in an 850 square foot apartment with 2 kids. We've lived in really rundown, basic apartments. We lived in a 1707 colonial house where we had weasels and flying squirrels and snakes and, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. And in every season, I feel like God has given us the grace to be able to kind of be like, okay, how can we do the best with what we've been given and create a sanctuary?
I don't know that we would have recognized it early on, but that God was really calling us to create sanctuary out of the home that he provided.
Yeah.
And there is that danger to think, well, that home would be a really nice sanctuary.
If I only had that, then.
Yeah. In different seasons, and whether that's budget, whether it's kids, just practically speaking, I think about when you have kids, the furniture you get, even like there are certain decisions we made about furniture that were based around kids are going to beat this up. Like,
there are also some bad decisions we made. We're like, that was not the right furniture to get.
Yeah. Like what were we thinking? And then in terms of budget, I think about when we got into that big old house and we were house poor, we had, we were there, we were excited to be there, but we're like, we cannot
furnish this house.
There's more rooms than we have. And one of the things that I think a friend taught me how to do it, was finding free furniture on the side of the road or Facebook Marketplace, whatever it was. And I got really into the chalkboard paint, primarily because you don't have to go through all the work of sanding and doing all this stuff.
Not chalkboard paint.
Chalk paint. Yes.
You also were into chalkboard paint.
Yes, that as well, actually. But I ended up finding all of these. Again, they were honestly like a free dresser. There was a free dresser on the side of the road. You brought it home for me. I painted it with chalk paint and distressed it, got some cheap knobs to put on it. And to this day, that is the stand that's in our living room. That is our TV stand. And sometimes it's just simple things like that you're like, listen, I don't have a ton of money, but there are little kind of creative ways that we've had to think about the space that we're in and the place that we're in. Because, when you're creating sanctuary, you may not be in a space where you have an unlimited budget or unlimited time or whatever to do that. So what can you do within your means? It could be as simple as putting the lights that you can dim in your home, which is something that we have done. Did we do it before this house too?
Yeah, our last house, the technology's super inexpensive now to get like real basic smart lights. That is a huge thing for me, like lamps. I hate overhead lighting. Like I have a vendetta against overhead lighting.
We're sitting in the spotlights right now.
These will be turned off very quickly. But So like the ability to dim and create atmosphere, which is, really kind of one of the principles. And like, how can you create the best atmosphere where you are with what you have? And I do think simplicity, I'm just a huge believer in that you need to inventory the things that you have and get rid of stuff.
It's funny, even just talking about it, it's fun for me to remember back to each of the different homes that we've been in, because they all have been very different. And I can honestly say every single one of them, I have such fond memories of how we created a sanctuary in a home. And they were all in different seasons and very, very different spaces. And this house that we're in now, one of the things that's been fun is we just did, like, we're working on a project now from Christmas that is one of those things that we're like, oh, this is something that would be on our list of, man, we would love to do this, but maybe wouldn't have unless we were selling the house. And you're like, I'm going to do this for Christmas.
An action item for people, we're making a list. I make a spreadsheet with different categories. I have like home maintenance, I have furnishings, and things that are sort of like more temporal that, you might have for 10 years. And we have like a dream list of things that would be amazing, but we may never do. And what we've started to do, though, is to prioritize those and even put some dollar amounts next to them, just to be like, okay, over the next couple of years, like, what are the things that we want to chase after? Because if you don't make a plan, then you'll never get anywhere with those type of things, or you'll just be haphazard and you'll spend a lot of money on things. You'll look back and be like, oh, we should have done this other thing over here. Going into a new year, what would be some things that you could invest in? Maybe it is just taking the time. Hey, next summer, we're going to have a massive yard sale and we're going to really go hard. Or what are a couple things that, maybe we should find that furniture on the side of the road, or we should invest these resources into something that could be a real takeaway for people to kind of consider. So yeah, thanks so much for the way that you've created a wonderful home. Sorry that I have so many opinions.
I feel like we've worked it out, because now you have an office in this house, and you can do whatever you want in that space.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. Start kicking off a new year. We're going to continue to come back with some new episodes. I think in the coming weeks, one of the ones we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about dating. And both of us grew up in the purity culture era and kind of the way to kind of think through that, as we've had some really good listener questions on that. So look forward to that episode coming up. And anything else you want to say to people before we go?
Yeah, even if you do not watch YouTube, I'm just sending out the reminder that I know I'm never giving up. You clicking subscribe on YouTube is all I need to increase it. You never have to watch
you
it.
And 160 of your friends.
Yeah. Honestly, like, write to people and be like, listen, you never have to watch these people. You don't even have to like them. Just click subscribe, because Bethany would like to embarrass her husband.
Well,
on
you have to
TikTok.
give people context, because they may not have listened to all of these. So if we hit 500 listeners, I've made a commitment that I will do a TikTok dance.
Yes. And we've even allowed listeners to give their recommendations of what TikTok dance that will be. And I look forward to it. I know it's going to happen. It's a slow build, little by little, we're just
like our
progress.
New Year's things. It's about consistency.
Yeah.
So.
This is our New Year's resolution. I would like to accomplish this one by January, though. So if we could end of this month, crank it out.
You are believing by faith. So.
I am. Absolutely. I believe that we can do this, listeners.
You said earlier that you didn't think the Lord had spoken to me, and I'm going to challenge you on this one. But I will still follow through with the commitment when the day comes. January 2028.
Okay, first of all, I did not drag the Lord, and I did not say the Lord was going to. I'm saying right now, I'm putting my faith in the listeners. And I think that the Lord would be pleased if they would go and subscribe. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Thanks so much for listening. We look forward to connecting with you a week from now.
Here's hoping you press record this time.
Wait a second.
No.